Most people believe inequality is the result of unfairness. They believe some people take more than they deserve, that the system is rigged, that something went wrong. They argue about morality. But Ray Dalio learned something far more uncomfortable. Inequality doesn't happen because the system fails. It happens because the system works. The worker feels inequality as distance. No matter how hard they work, the gap never closes. The rules feel fixed. Progress feels capped. The investor feels inequality as leverage. Access matters more than effort. Timing matters more than intelligence. Position matters more than intention. Two perspectives, one system, one outcome. Most people believe inequality is accidental. Ray Dalio learned it is structural. From the outside, inequality looks like injustice. From the inside, it looks like math. In the previous videos, we saw how debt accelerates systems, how money adjusts to preserve stability, and how behavior amplifies cycles. When these forces combine, inequality is not just expected, it is inevitable. Because systems do not reward effort equally. They reward position. They reward access. They reward exposure to compounding. And once those advantages exist, the system protects them, not intentionally, automatically. This is where most people get trapped. They try to fix inequality by changing outcomes. Ray Dalio learned you can only understand it by studying rules, because inequality is not created at the finish line. It is created at the starting point. Once inequality is framed as a moral issue, it becomes impossible to understand. People argue about fairness. They argue about intentions. They argue about who deserves what. Ray Dalio learned to step away from that debate, because systems do not respond to morality. They respond to incentives. In every economic system, resources flow toward advantage, not because someone decided it should be that way, but because the rules allow it. And once advantage exists, it compounds. Most people believe effort is the main driver of outcomes. Work harder, be disciplined, make fewer mistakes. But effort operates inside boundaries, and those boundaries are set by structure. The worker exchanges time for money, hours for income, energy for stability. The relationship is linear. More work produces more pay, up to a limit. Beyond that limit, effort stops compounding. The investor operates under a different rule. Capital compounds. Assets grow without direct time input. Exposure matters more than effort. Time works for capital in ways it never works for labor. Two paths, two mechanics, one system. Ray Dalio understood that inequality begins here, not with greed, not with corruption, but with how the system rewards different inputs. Labor is paid once. Capital is paid repeatedly. That single difference reshapes outcomes over decades. Those with access to assets experience exponential growth. Those without access experience linear growth. Over short periods, the difference is small. Over long periods, it becomes decisive. This is why inequality feels invisible at first. It builds quietly, year after year, cycle after cycle. Ray Dalio emphasized that access matters more than intelligence. Access to credit, access to capital, access to information, access to time. These are not evenly distributed, and the system does not correct for that. Debt amplifies this effect. Those with assets can borrow cheaply. They use leverage to increase exposure. Returns compound faster. Risk is spread. Those without assets borrow to survive. Debt becomes consumption. Interest becomes friction. The system extracts value instead of multiplying it. Same tool, different position, different outcome. This is where inequality accelerates, not because rules change, but because the same rules apply differently depending on where you stand. Ray Dalio observed that systems naturally protect existing capital, not consciously, automatically. When markets fall, liquidity is injected. Assets recover. Those already exposed benefit first. Those outside the system feel relief last, if at all. When inflation rises, wages lag. Asset prices adjust faster. Purchasing power shifts upward, again, quietly. Inequality does not require manipulation. It emerges from asymmetry. Asymmetry of access. Asymmetry of timing. Asymmetry of exposure. This is why inequality persists, even when intentions change, even when policies shift, even when leaders rotate. Ray Dalio did not argue that this is good or bad. He argued that it is structural. And structures do not respond to outrage. They respond to pressure. Most people try to solve inequality at the outcome level. Higher wages, redistribution, temporary relief. These measures may slow symptoms. They do not change mechanics, because inequality is not created at the end of the process. It is created at the beginning, at access points, at entry conditions, at who is allowed to compound and who is not. This is why inequality widens most during periods of monetary expansion. When money is created, it does not enter the system evenly. It flows first through financial channels. Assets adjust before wages do. Those closest to the source benefit most. Ray Dalio saw this repeatedly, across cycles, across countries, across decades. To understand inequality, you have to stop asking who is at fault and start asking how the machine distributes advantage. Because the system does not care about fairness. It cares about continuity, and continuity rewards position. When inequality becomes visible, people assume something broke. They expect crises to fix it. They believe downturns reset the system. Ray Dalio learned the opposite. Crises rarely eliminate inequality. They reorganize it. Throughout history, periods of stability quietly widen the gap. Returns compound. Assets grow. Who has less? But outcomes are symptoms. The cause lies in structure. Structure determines access. Access determines compounding. Compounding determines inequality. This is why inequality does not disappear with good intentions. It disappears only when structure changes, and structural change is rare. Systems resist it, because structure preserves continuity, and continuity protects the system itself. This is the uncomfortable truth Ray Dalio emphasized. Inequality is not an error. It is a byproduct of stability. When inequality is understood as structure, something important changes. People stop asking who to blame and start asking how the system actually works. Ray Dalio did not present inequality as a moral failure. He presented it as a mechanical outcome, a result of incentives, access, compounding, and time. This is why inequality feels so persistent, because it is not maintained by intention. It is maintained by structure. The worker is not failing. They are operating inside a system where effort is linear and limits are fixed. The investor is not winning because they are superior. They are positioned where compounding is allowed to work. Both are subject to the same system. But the system does not reward them equally. Understanding this does not make inequality disappear, but it removes confusion. It replaces frustration with clarity. Ray Dalio emphasized that systems do not change because people demand fairness. They change only when pressure becomes unavoidable. Until then, they preserve continuity. This is why inequality narrows only during extreme moments, wars, defaults, severe restructurings, moments when the cost of preservation exceeds the cost of change. Absent those moments, the system adapts. It absorbs tension, it redistributes pressure, and it continues. For most people, this means something uncomfortable. Waiting does not improve position. Time does not help equally. For some, awareness becomes leverage. Not leverage over others, leverage over expectations. Ray Dalio did not argue that everyone should become an investor. He argued that everyone should understand the machine they live inside, because misunderstanding the system feels like injustice. Understanding it feels like reality. Inequality is not created by bad actors at the end of the process. It is created by rules at the beginning, by who has access, by who can compound, by who enters early. This is why inequality persists across generations, not because effort disappears, but because structure remains. The system does not ask if this is fair. It asks if it is stable, and stability rewards position. Once you see this, you stop expecting the system to change for you and start recognizing how it actually behaves. Ray Dalio's lesson was never about resentment. It was about realism. Inequality is not accidental. It is structural. And structures do not respond to emotion. They respond to pressure.